president, co-founder as well. James, good to have you again this morning. What's your reaction to a story like that one?
I mean, overall, my initial reaction is to be pleased. I think what you've seen thus far is the banks that have paid back have, in fact, according to the story, allowed the government and therefore the taxpayer to reap a profit. The second reaction is, as it was alluded to, is still to be somewhat cautious. There is still huge outstanding lending going on or investments in companies such as Citi and B of A, Fannie, Freddie, AIG, et cetera. And that's why I'm so cautious and thinking that maybe the most meaningless statistic in sports, the score at halftime. So we have to add all this up going forward. All
right. So it's way too early, is your view, to say, all right, the TARP in and of itself is a success. But, you know, early signs are that this is what they sold us on, that they would make a profit, and at least in part they're doing it.
And that's why, again, my first reaction is to be pleased that the early indications are that it's working, and let's certainly hope.
Do you see any investment opportunities coming up, you know, as a result of this, or you know, looking at it as a place to make money as opposed to just assess it?
That's a great question. I think if you look at some of the recent trading, and certainly the very bullish trading going on in stocks such as B of A and particularly AIG, which obviously have huge government support behind them, maybe there's an indication there that investors actually are getting behind this as well.
Dick Beauvais came out with a note yesterday from Mockdale Securities, and this is what he has to say. He says that bank earnings are going to be pretty dismal going into the end of this year. But if you look out to 2011 to 2015, he says U.S. bank earnings are likely to grow by 300 to 500%. Are you looking at financials with that same horizon? What do you think about that?
Well, in the short term, I think financials, and particularly some of the banks, are certainly borrowing themselves at a fairly attractive rate, we'll say, and they're lending out at a fairly substantial rate. So the fact is, I think bank earnings should actually prove to be somewhat better over the next few quarters. In fact, because their basic core business of lending at a reasonable margin is very much in their favor.
Yes. And so for that long out, I mean, when you talk about long-term investments, are you looking out to 2015 already as a way to look at these financials?
I mean, I think certainly that going out that far, you're going to see rates themselves are going to be increased. But I think banks getting back to their core business of lending, and I hate to say it, but I think greed is going to help drive some of this. The banks that are in better shape are going to lend, and they're going to attract, again, more investors as a result. And I think the banks that are slow to lend are going to have to get behind this.
All right, Jim, thanks a lot. Jim Frischling is with us from New Oak throughout the morning. Thank you, Jim.
All right, big news in Japan.
All right, instant audit on this. James Frischling is with us this morning from New Oak Capital, where he's president and co-founder. It has been since Ben Moshe came in. I mean, the stock has gone bonkers. It's up 280% in the past 4 weeks, which is ridiculous. I wonder maybe it'll back off a little bit on this, but what do you make of what's going on at AIG?
Well, I think Mr. Ben Moshe is certainly he's very outspoken, talks with a great deal of confidence. I think the market has also reacted positively to Morris Greenberg, being talked about maybe as bringing back as some sort of advisor.
Right.
So there has been some positive sentiment. In addition, the market rally and the spread compression in a number of debt products actually, one would argue, it is an improvement in AIG's investment portfolio. So maybe that is contributing to the rally as well.
And take a look at that aircraft leasing business, supposedly worth $40 billion. The guy that runs it wants to take about $2 billion or make an offer. I mean, is that some sort of model for the rest of the company? I mean, you see that just of what could be potentially the value and see what someone's offering for it. It doesn't seem like a lot.
I read that story two ways. I certainly, it'd be concerning if one of the prize assets of AIG and its leader is looking to provide a fairly aggressive or rather low bid, we'll say, to go compete and take his business elsewhere. Then again, I've heard that there's great depth to the senior management of that unit, particularly President John Pluger. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And with that in mind, maybe the competition and the demand for this away is going to help AIG secure a better price for, again, their prized asset.
You know, final thing here, we talked at the top about the government making money on the TARP, but mentioned at the time that it doesn't look like we're going to make money on AIG. Maybe a little more than we thought, considering what Ben Moshe's up to, or no?
I think actually that's my position right now. A little more than they thought. You know, AIG is becoming everyone's punching bag. Yet there is a good story here. The stock has improved dramatically. Probably some element of that, or a significant element of that, is the squeezing of shorts. Yeah. But the fact is, as a taxpayer and as the U.S. government having an investment in AIG, a significant one, I take this news as positive.
Yeah.
All right.
Whatever we can get back.
Whatever we can get back.
I guess.
All right, Jim. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, the Fed and the Treasury. Well, a stinging report is expected today from a top SEC official on the agency's failure to prevent Bernie Madoff's $65 billion Ponzi scheme. Joining me to talk a little bit about the impact of this on his own business and otherwise, James Friesling, New Oak Capital president and co-founder. James, it's interesting to think just a year ago this was not part of our news cycle. We didn't talk about Bernie Madoff, and now look at us.
And I know many people out there who had never heard of Mr. Madoff prior to his actually admission and his arrest.
Did you hear about him?
I had actually heard of him, and being a native New Yorker, his name was not unknown to me.
What's the impact of what's happened on your business?
Well, I think first and foremost, the SEC needs a dramatic overhaul, and to a certain extent, I support and encourage that. I think we need the SEC to be, I almost dare say, feared and certainly respected, but only if the SEC really has their handle on the situation or on the supervision. I think can investor trust and confidence come back to this market. I think there is a mistrust in this market right now. People look at each other differently. They question everything as opposed to maybe not only just a year ago, you'd tend to believe what you're hearing, and now I think there's a huge mistrust.
You know, your point's well taken about stoking a little bit of fear, sometimes not that bad, as far as making someone a little nervous about what the consequences of one's actions might be. But how do you think in this market the SEC could accomplish that?
First of all, they're dramatically understaffed. And listening to actually on your network, Mary Shapiro's report, just how many hundreds of examiners they have to cover the thousands of institutions and mutual funds alone.
So more people right away.
More people, a larger budget. This is going to have to cost some money, but I think that's money that would be very, very well spent.
It's interesting. I was watching Dateline last night that was rerunning a report that they aired about a year ago about the source of the financial crisis, the credit crisis overall. And there was an economist that was interviewed during that report that said the whole system has to be overhauled, the entire system. I mean, not just the regulators, but just the way that we do business. So does it go beyond the SEC?
I think it does. I mean, the Madoff situation is a truly unique one, given its size. But then also given the number of whistleblowers that were coming forward, and that makes it unique. But I do think the issue of trust and confidence, the bond between the fiduciary and the investor has been dramatically strained. And you know, you asked me about my own business. Sure. As an emerging manager, as a relatively new company, you know, we have to demonstrate a great deal of institutional, I guess, credibility to gain people's confidence and support. As a developing story.
Well, we wish you luck.
Well, thank you very much.
We appreciate that perspective as well, because you forget about how that also kind of trickles down to other investment managers. Again, we're going to get more insight on that report a little later on today. In the meantime, we're going to